All right, let's jump right into this. In this explainer, we're diving into a really compelling argument from our source material. It basically says there are two very different paths to fulfillment. One is all about connection, and the other, well, it leads to isolation. So which one actually leads to happiness? Let's find out. I mean, it's the question we've all asked ourselves, right? We're all looking for joy, for purpose. But what's the real secret sauce? The material we're looking at today suggests there's a pretty clear answer, and it starts by giving us two very distinct choices. And here they are. On one hand, you've got the path of connection, the one built on our bonds with other people. And on the other hand, the path of isolation, which, as you can guess, leads to being alone. You could say one path builds bridges while the other puts up walls. So let's start by walking across that bridge. So, this first path our source material lays out is something it calls the altruism bridge. The idea here is that altruism, living for others, isn't just a nice thing to do. It's a fundamental connection not just to other people, but to a deeper sense of meaning in our own lives.
And, this isn't some brand new idea. The source points out that thinkers like Aristotle figured this out literally centuries ago. This concept, that our own happiness is tangled up with the well-being of the people around us, has some seriously deep roots.
But hey, this isn't just about ancient philosophy. The source material actually backs this idea up with evidence from 3 different scientific fields. It shows how altruism affects us biologically, psychologically, and even sociologically. Let's dig into the psychological side first.
And wow, from a psychological view, the impact is pretty incredible. A 2023 Harvard study that our source cites found that people who volunteer regularly get a 40% boost in their own happiness, and on top of that, a 25% drop in anxiety. So the very act of helping others directly makes us feel better.
And get this, it's not a one-way street. It's not just about what happens when you give help. The source also highlights research that shows people on the receiving end of that kindness and support see their own rates of depression fall by around 30%. That connection is just a powerful, powerful healer.
Now, zoom out to the societal level, and the effects are just massive. The source brings up South Africa's Ubuntu project. It's a program built on this whole philosophy of I am because we are, of mutual aid. And in the communities that really leaned into this, a stunning 25% drop in violent crime. It just goes to show how altruism can literally build a safer world for everyone. So, to kind of wrap up the source's whole take on this, altruism isn't just a good deed. It's framed as something much deeper, a bridge that connects us to each other, to our communities, and even to a higher purpose. Okay, now let's look at the other path.
Now, our source presents a total contrast to that altruism bridge. It calls this second path the chemical trap. And this is the path of trying to find happiness through substances, which, the source argues, is just a deceptive, dangerous shortcut. It promises connection, but in the end, it only delivers more isolation. And the price people pay for getting caught in this trap is just devastating. The source cites CDC data showing that in a single recent year, more than 107,000 people in the U.S. died from drug overdoses. That number is just staggering. It really shows you the life and death stakes we're talking about here.
This is where the source really draws a sharp line in the sand. It argues that the pleasure from drugs is completely different from the fulfillment of altruism. It's a temporary high, an isolated feeling that leads to addiction, health problems, and broken relationships, basically deepening the very loneliness people were trying to escape in the first place.
And this all comes back to that core theme of isolation. The source points to a WHO report that found a whopping 60% of people with substance abuse problems also report feeling severely lonely. So the chemical trap doesn't just fail to build connection, it actively makes the isolation worse.
So there you have it, 2 completely opposing paths, and they lead to vastly different places. Now let's put them side by side based on the points from our source and really see how they stack up. Okay, so here's the breakdown. The altruism bridge, that brings lasting fulfillment. The chemical trap, just a fleeting high. Altruism builds up your social bonds, while substance use just creates more isolation. But the most important part is this. Each path creates its own kind of cycle. And this idea of a cycle is maybe the most important takeaway from our source here. It argues that these paths aren't just one-off choices. They're self-reinforcing loops that can either pull you up or drag you down. And here's what that positive cycle looks like. It starts with a simple act of helping somebody. That act gives you a real, genuine feeling of fulfillment and happiness. And that feeling, it makes you want to help again. It's this beautiful upward spiral where giving and feeling good become the same thing. To really bring this home, the source shares this incredibly powerful quote from a recovering addict. It just perfectly captures the power of choosing that altruistic path. For this person, it wasn't about finding a substitute for a high. It was about finding a real, lasting connection with other people, and through that, finding themselves again.
So, we'll leave you with this question, one that brings this entire idea right back to you and me right now. According to this perspective, that bridge to happiness isn't some huge, complicated thing we have to build. It's built one small, kind, connecting act at a time. The only real question is, what's your first step going to be?